Let me begin then by just thanking everyone for having come to join us. Thank you for taking the time to take part in this session tonight. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible, but just to say that we really do appreciate the generosity that you're giving at this busy time. It's very strange this year, but we really do appreciate you putting your names forward, because while we don't know how many people are going to come given the present situation, we are now prepared to be able to deal with numbers if they do come. And if it wasn't for your generosity, we would probably be having to keep the church closed over Christmas. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you. What I want to do really is just talk you through what the stewards need to be doing at the different services. I think the first thing I would also say is it's important that stewards are setting a good example. So for example, they should have a mask, and they should wear the mask covering their nose, covering their mouth, as the guidance tells us. It would be good that the stewards are seen to be cleaning their hands. You know, if you've had to touch a pen or you've had to touch something that someone else has done, you may, it's good that you're seen then to be cleaning your hands and showing people good practice for dealing with the arrangements that we've got at the moment. The other thing that's important is that you work as a team, and that someone in your group at that service beforehand should help you understand which roles in particular you'll be playing at the service that you're at. And that's something that I would suggest we can sort out if people can come on time for the time that the session it begins at. We'll just have a 5-minute briefing to let people know where they're going to be stationed in the church and what they'll be expected to do. So what I'm going to do in the presentation now is just share with you some clips that I've taken in church, and just to talk through the different aspects of stewarding a service in church. So let me begin by just sharing with you this video clip. Hopefully you can see it on your screen. And the first thing I just want to talk about is the importance of tracking and tracing. You know, and we will have the table set up. We've asked people to bring pieces of paper with them already, but if people haven't got pieces of paper, they need to write their name and contact numbers, or they need to use the QR to scan their data into their phone. Many people will be having the chance outside to sterilize their hands, but it's good then that we have some stewards inside the church who can check that people are sterilizing their hands and can see that people leave their papers so they can go into the envelope for tracking and tracing. You can see there people sterilizing their hands as they come in. It's also important that as people come in, that stewards begin to guide them into the seats. It's important that we don't just let people choose where they're going to sit, but they are directed by a steward, especially when we're going to have potentially a busy church. And so I'm going to say a bit more at the end about the green dots and how important they are. But when there's a lot of stewards on, it's good that we have 1 or 2 stewards in the center of the church or the far side of the church. And so the stewards at the door guide the people as they come into one of the stewards in the church, who will then seat them and make sure that they are correctly spaced. And the other thing I would just mention is at the beginning, as people come in, it's probably good to have the earlier people being put into the benches at the front of the church. And then when the front and the center of the church is full, to direct people to the far side of the church. The reason for this is if there are latecomers that are coming to church, it's better that the rows near the side door are empty, so that latecomers can be directed into the benches without people being disturbed during the celebration of the Mass. I know I found it very distracting sometimes when people come late and stewards are trying to take them to the other side of the church. It becomes the focus of people's attention. So for that reason, we try and fill the centre and the far side of the church and keep the benches near the doors as empty as possible for the beginning of Mass in case there are latecomers. Now, I will move this video on a little bit. You can see, I think in a moment, how people will begin to move in and to the far side of the church, being guided by the stewards. Okay, you can see now where the far side of the church is having people put in it. As I said, I will come back and say a bit more about the spacing, which is very important. Okay, and again, it's important to be sterilizing one's hands. For those who are reading and doing things, that's also important. I put this video together very quickly just before the meeting began and obviously missed a piece that I should have edited out. Okay, now towards the end of Mass, when people are leaving, we have these blocks of wood on the doors in the porch at the back of the church. The idea is that everyone has to come into the church through the side door. But of course, when the church is full, it's dangerous to have the church doors locked. So what we have is a piece of wood that just stops the door being opened from the outside. And so what we do need during Mass is some of the stewards to be towards the back of the church, just in case there was an emergency and the church had to be evacuated. The stewards then would take these pieces of wood and push the doors open so that people can get out quickly. The other thing then is at the end of Mass, after communion, the stewards need to make sure that the doors are open so that people can leave the church quickly and safely. One of the reasons we've started using these pieces of wood is we have had situations over the last few months where when the church was full, people still came in the doors at the back after they'd been turned away at the side. So we had to take this precaution of keeping the doors closed so that people couldn't get in, so that we were able to maintain the numbers that we have. So that's just to say the back door at the porch. And one of the things we're going to be doing over Christmas is to direct everyone out at the end of Mass through the back doors. So we don't have people coming in the side door and going out the side door. That way it's easier to see that people are leaving the church. One of the things that is important at the end of Mass is at the end of the service is that people leave as quickly as possible and that they don't start visiting statues or lighting candles or going to the manger or taking photos in front of the Christmas trees. They'll be asked to sit down at the end of Mass and be directed out. Okay, so it's very easy just to remove the piece of wood and then to push the door open. In this one, you can see people now going to communion and being guided to communion bench by bench by the Eucharistic ministers, by the stewards, sorry. And it's important that people are brought out of the benches slowly. It's important that people keep a distance, especially when they're with people either side of them that aren't from their bubble. There's no need to hurry. There's no need to get people standing up as soon as the bench in front has gone, because that tends to get people bunching, waiting for communion with the Eucharistic minister. With communion, we start at the center rows and then we'll go to the side bench. And when there's lots of stewards, it's good that one or two stewards are at the side benches, just stopping people moving, because people often will try and go when they want to go rather than when the system is asking them to. And so the people from the side benches have to go to the middle of the church and then follow the row around. The idea is to have a flow of people and people not having to double back on themselves. So it's important that people are directed to the front of the church or the back of the church. The stewards in the centre of the church need to keep an eye on where the spaces are for giving out communion. So if the priests at the front or the Eucharistic ministers at the front only have a few people, direct the people coming towards the centre from the sides to the front. If the people are coming from the back of the church, direct them to the back if there is space. So that way we get through the communion quickly, reverently, and smoothly. At the end of Mass, it's going to be very similar as it is during communion time. The stewards will be invited to direct people to the back of the church. And at the end of Mass, the 3 doors at the back should be open. So the people from the side aisles should be directed by a steward to go to the side door at the back nearest to them, with the people in the center row being directed out through the center door at the back. And that way there should be a flow of 3 different lines of people leaving the church quickly. The other thing that I would say to stewards that is important when we're directing people out of the church for communion is the idea of not rushing. You know, don't just have one bench going after another quickly. Wait till you see that the people are dispersing at the door and then send the next bench of people. Because what happens sometimes is the people start rushing quickly out one bench after another, and then they gather at the door inside the church. With the situation now, especially in tier 4, it's more important than ever that we allow the people to leave safely. And we also are going to be encouraging people not to meet outside the church or talk with people, that people need to leave the church and make their way home as quickly as possible. So that's just giving you a bit of an overview of what the stewards would be doing in the church. If the church is full before Mass begins or shortly after Mass begins, the doors at the side will be closed and people will not be able to enter. What we are putting on, if that happens, is the possibility of people attending the Mass in the parish hall. So we would need some stewards to be ready if the church gets full to help direct people to the parish hall and make sure that they remain safe in the parish hall. And that's something we'll give more information about when we begin on the evening, the hour before Mass begins, when the stewards should be there. At communion time, then, if there is an overflow in the hall, the Mass will be streamed there live, so people will see the Mass, and then a priest and a Eucharistic minister will take communion over to the hall at communion time, so that the people receive communion as well. What I would like to just draw to your attention finally, I'm going to share a different slide with you now, is just to make clear the importance of observing the dots that are on the benches and how people should sit, because we've noticed that sometimes people are being allowed to sit too close together. When people are coming from different bubbles, there should always be at least 1 meter distance between the people from each bubble. And I've just got a short video clip here that someone made, which I'm going to share with you, which, if you hopefully will explain what needs to happen.
Right, so what are the rules about distancing? As you know, in our pews, we've got green dots along the pew. Each green dot is 1 meter from the next. And the rules are that each person or each bubble must be at least 1 meter apart from anybody else. If they're not wearing a face covering, they must be at least 2 dots, at least 2 metres away from anyone else. So if I can ask my trusty assistant to come and sit down on the end of the bench. So you've got a singleton sitting opposite their green dot. The next person can come and sit opposite the next green dot, because they will then be a metre away from Jackie. Now, Jackie, if I could just ask you to shift along one bit here, in the middle, yeah. Jackie's arrived with her husband. They're sitting together where the green dot was, and there's now 2 of them on the end of the bench. The next person cannot sit at this next green dot because there is not a whole space between them. So from Jackie, the end of her bubble, the next one person has to go along to the next free dot. So although Jackie is not sitting quite at the second green dot, you can't put the next person at the second green dot. They must be the next dot along. So just remember, if anybody comes in and fills the space, any part of a bubble, a family bubble, comes in and fills a space between the green dots, you cannot use the very next dot. You have to move the one after that.
Okay. So hopefully that helps you understand that the minimum distance between people from different bubbles has to be a metre. If a person has no mask, for example, they've got an exemption for health reasons, then there has to be at least a 2 metre distance from the nearest person to them. So it's important that stewards are attentive to the social distancing, because sometimes I have noticed when people have been seated by the stewards, someone from the family will try and sneak in and sit beside someone that's already in the church. And that can put people's lives in danger or their health in danger because we're not following the guidelines. So it is important that people can't just go in and sit where they want, that they are guided by the stewards. And for that reason, it's important that the stewards understand what the significance of the dots are and how that metre distance of people with masks from different bubbles has to be preserved. So hopefully that information will help you understand what needs to be done. I think in most of the groups of stewards that we have over Christmas, there are some people that do have some experience, but I'm sure it will work well. And as I say, the video that I've put on this session this evening, I have recorded, I will upload to YouTube, and then I will send a link to all of you. So if you wanted to watch it again to remind yourself of the details, you'd have an opportunity to do that. So what I'm just going to do at this point is I'm just going to check to see if any questions have been coming in. Okay, so I see a few questions have come in. If you've thought of more questions, do click on that link in the chat. Hold on now, I'm just going to stop the share for a moment. I'm going to mute everyone again. I think some people just came in a bit late and so they weren't muted. What I'm going to do is put again the link here in the chat. So if people haven't managed to click on that yet, they still have the chance to do so. And that should bring up a screen that allows you to send questions. So what I'm going to do now is just go to the questions that have come in so far, but please do feel free to keep adding questions because they will appear on the screen and we will respond. Now, the first question I see here is, what if on the day, those that say they will volunteer don't actually turn up and there are not enough of us? Is there a plan? The plan would have to be that we would turn people away, that would say that we're not able to offer the safe environment for the church. So if people don't turn up and we have lost a significant number of people, we would find ourselves possibly having to cancel the Mass, or if there's enough people for the church, but not enough people to manage the overflow into the hall, we wouldn't be able to stream the service into the hall. So it is important that people arrive on time so that we can give them the instructions, and we would then be in a position to assess if we're going to be caught out and having to adjust the plans at the last minute. Okay. Are face shields acceptable? Now, as long as people are using something that meets the guidelines, that is acceptable. Okay. Now, with the question about the allotment of volunteers, we will send out a message to remind people, but at the moment we're using the times that you gave us when you signed up. We've not been moving people around. We've been using the times people said. So what I'll try to do tomorrow or Wednesday is send out a rota with all the names so people know and are reminded which service they signed up for. And we'll send that out using the email. Now, 1 or 2 people that signed up, I think that their email addresses were slightly wrong. So if you know of people that did offer to help that didn't get the message about today, it would be good if you could pass the information on to them about the recording that will be online so they can join it. But also it might be good if you ask them to contact us again so that we can share information with them and share the rota with them. Now, another question that came up here is, what if more than 5 members arrive from the same house? That's fine. They can sit together. What I would say that we encourage people to do if they're from the same house or if they're in the same bubble. So it could be that as a family and the children's grandmother is part of their bubble and they're coming together, they can sit together side by side. They don't have to be spread. And in fact, if people are from the same bubble, we would like them to be sitting closely together because they don't need to social distance. And that means that they're not taking up space that other people might be able to use. Yeah. Now, the times, there's a question here about if the service starts at midnight, do we come in 15 minutes earlier? No, when you were asked to sign up, we asked people to sign up for an hour before the service, because at Christmas time, if people are coming, they're sometimes there an hour and a half beforehand sometimes. So we need people to come for the hour beforehand because that's where it gets busy. Now, we don't know quite how busy it's going to be this Christmas. If people don't come because of tier 4 and their anxieties about coming to church, then it will be maybe that we're over prepared and we have too many people to help. But it's better that we err on the side of caution rather than find ourselves caught out. There's a question here about seating people yourselves. It's best that the stewards direct people to the seat, explaining to them about the dots when they're at the end of the bench the people are going into. The reason I would say that is, in my experience, I have watched many times where stewards have directed people to the other side explaining things, and then the people go where they want to and ignore the instructions they've been given. So because of the seriousness of the present situation, we're asking the stewards to make their way with the people and put them in the bench that you designate them to. Now, that doesn't mean that all the stewards are hanging around the door at the side. What it means is the stewards at the door can maybe direct the people towards stewards who are standing at the center of the church or in the far aisle at the end of the central, the center, or maybe there are stewards at the back of the church. And so the stewards at the door can direct people to the stewards in other parts of the church, and then those stewards can take them to the seats. If there are disputes, the important thing is to try and manage them responsibly. Usually when there is a dispute, it happens near the door itself. And in my experience, the last few months, usually if there's a dispute, it's because people have come and the church is full and they try and put pressure on the stewards to let them in. What we will have are some signs that go up on the door when the church is full, just saying the church is full. But what we would want then is some of the stewards to be at the door, outside the door, and some in the hall, guiding people to the hall if there are enough stewards that we can have an overflow from the Mass. Yeah. Now, how many stewards will there be at each Mass? We have tried to have a group of about 13 or 14 stewards at each Mass to allow for the possibility of an overflow. And that's why I say if people arrive early, we are able then to give them a reminder of the training and share the different roles that they would be responsible for. With respect to how do we as stewards know what each of us are doing or placed in the church, that's the type of thing we want to get straight with people when they arrive at the beginning of the opening of the church. After each Mass, where there's a sufficient gap, the church will be locked while cleaning takes place, and then the church will be open an hour before Mass for people that are arriving. And so we can't really open the church to let people in until the stewards are there and know the work that they're going to be doing. Okay. Now, I think I've answered all the questions that have come in so far. If there are any other questions, I would still give you a moment to answer those questions or to ask the questions, and then I will try to answer them.
Hi, Father Paul, this is Christina.
Okay, hello, Christina.
I have a question. So in the event that we need to open the parish hall,
Yes.
do we also need a steward there during communion?
Yes, there would need to be some of the stewards that would be over in the hall, making sure that social distancing and people are going in and things are happening correctly. So,
Okay.
So that will be one of the tasks that will be allocated to some of the stewards when the session begins. So we're prepared if we find that there is a rush and that there is an overflow. The other thing I would mention for the stewards to be aware of is at the end of Mass, while some of the stewards would be guiding people out, it would also be good that some of the stewards are able to help with the wiping down of the benches and the preparation of the church. But we'd also be looking for some volunteers to stay behind after Mass each time to help with that. We will be having to sterilize all the benches, and possibly after one or two of the Masses, we'll need to be washing the floor. I mean, that's the routine that we've had now since the church reopened at the end of May, early June this year, and we'll have to continue that over Christmas as well. Okay, Sebi.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Could I ask, because I don't see many people's faces here, so if people do have a question, I would invite you to type it and send it through the system that I set up, if you're able to. If not, then I will try and answer. So was that Linda I heard?
Yeah, just with the overflow in the hall.
Yes.
Is that going to be marked out with dots, or it's just standing up?
What we'll have in the hall are chairs with gaps between them.
Okay.
Facing. Okay. And what we'll have is a television screen or a projection so that the live stream will be able to be followed in the church, in the hall. Just it'll be about 10 seconds behind what's happening in the church. Okay. Sebi, I think you had a question as well.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, was supposed to ask exactly the same question that Linda asked, whether the church, there will be a sitting arrangement on the hall rather. Yeah. There will be people be sitting on, how will it work? Okay, that's answered. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if we will use the hall in the end. Just looking at the way the attendance has been the last few weeks, numbers are low. But my concern, and this is one of the reasons why we particularly want to make sure we've got plenty of stewards, is one of my concerns is that given the situation we're in now, one of the few places people can go on Christmas Day is church. And it's possible that we could find lots of people coming to church who don't normally come to church and aren't aware of the situation and the guidelines at the moment. So for that reason, it's important that we have a lot of people who are ready, if people do come, that they are ready for keeping people safe. The other thing it's important for you to be aware of as stewards is in the present situation, while churches are open for services, people are not meant to be mixing with people from other bubbles. They should only be engaging with the people they come with. So people shouldn't be wandering around the church, speaking to people, wishing them a happy Christmas. It's a very strange situation, really, because it goes against what we would normally want to be doing. But it's important that if you do see people moving around the church, that you invite them to go and sit down. All the time, people can be difficult, but it's important that you as stewards representing the church are patient, are respectful, and yet at the same time try to be firm. But it can be difficult sometimes. And if you find someone isn't really following what they've been asked to do, then in that case, maybe to see if there's another steward that can give you some support, or if it's a really bad situation, you might need to ask for one of the priests to come to explain and deal with the thing. Okay. Thank you. I'm conscious that this is taken already over half an hour. I'm just going to ask you to do one more thing as we've come to the end of the session, and that's again on the other site that I gave you, the www.menti.com. If you click on that, you'll find another another slide has come up, hopefully, which asks you to share 3 words describing how you feel about this presentation and whether or not it's helped you. So I'm just going to invite you to put in 3 words, and it just gives us a sense then of how helpful or not you have found the session this evening and how you feel about being a steward over Christmas. Okay, now let me, okay, no, sorry. Now I think something has happened here and someone has played with the screen. I think a child maybe has got access to something. Okay, so if you enter those words and submit them, you'll see them beginning to, sorry. Okay, just if you begin to click those words in now, hopefully they will begin to appear here and you'll see kind of a sense of what people are thinking. The words that are bigger are the words that have been repeated. So it gives us a sense of how people have found the session this evening. So just invite you to keep adding words and we'll get a sense of how people are feeling today. Okay. I see someone typed happy all over the screen, so that's a good sign. Okay, so we've had 5 or 6 people sharing their words, but they will just come in quickly and we build it up and see the word ideas. Okay. And as I said at the beginning, we do appreciate your help, your time, your energy, and it really wouldn't be possible for us to be offering these services this year without your help. So I do appreciate that. Okay. Okay, I'm going to, I think, reopen the, you might need to resubmit again, sorry. I think something has happened that it's been limited to a minute at a time, so. So hopefully, as those of you that are watching can see, the words all seem to be fairly positive, that people have found it helpful, informative, that they have found it calming, it's been clear, they can see it's been prepared. So hopefully that will give you a bit more confidence. And really, I don't really now want to maybe take any more of your time. I will just wish you well. Look forward to seeing you over the Christmas season.